Welcome, Spartans, to today's Professional Series webcast. My name is Dave Isbell, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Professional Enrichment in the MSU Alumni Association. I'm also your host for today's webinar on how to prepare for a layoff before you get laid off. Before I introduce today's presenter, I want to let you know that we host these webinars every second and fourth Thursday of each month at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that these are recorded and will be available within a few days of the live cast on our blog, SpartansHelpingSpartans.com. I also want to point out the chat box on the left side of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing in the box at the bottom of the chat box anytime. If a presenter doesn't answer your question during her presentation, I'll circle back at the end of the presentation and make sure she addresses it. I also like to invite you to continue the conversation with us once the webcast is over on Twitter by following us at Helping Spartans, and we're going to use the hashtag Layoffs for this particular presentation. With that, it's my honor to introduce you to today's presenter. Laura M. Labovich is a Spartan, a two-time Spartan with a BA in Employee Relations and a Master of Labor and Industrial Relations. I think she's going to know what color to wear this Saturday at the game. As Chief Executive Officer of the Career Strategy Group, an outplacement and career management firm in Bethesda, Maryland, Laura shares best-in-class job search strategy tools and tactics with job seekers all over the world, empowering them to land a job faster. Before launching the internship program for America Online, Laura got her start at Walt Disney World, where she recruited nationwide for the Walt Disney World College program, led the recreation recruiting and staffing efforts for Disney's Typhoon Lagoon and Disney's Blizzard Beach water parks, and staffed up Disney's Animal Kingdom for its inaugural launch. Laura's contagious enthusiasm and powerful methodology have garnered attention from such national news media as The Washington Post, Sirius XM Radio, Fox News, NBC, USA Today, Chicago Tribune, Yahoo, and Monster.com. Laura is the co-author of the book 100 Conversations for Career Success, Learn to Network, Cold Call, and Tweet Your Way to Your Dream Job, a book about what to say and how to say it in your job search, a 2013 top career book selection by Forbes, and the author of the robust online job search course, Hired. With that, I'd like to welcome you, Laura. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I am so excited. Everyone on the call, I just want to say I'm so excited. I miss Michigan so much, and I feel very honored and super thrilled to be able to spend the next hour with my green and white peeps. So really happy and proud to be a Spartan and happy to be here today. So my contagious enthusiasm, David, you say that in my profile, my bio, and it's true. I am known to be almost irritatingly optimistic. So potentially, you know, this sort of a presentation, how to prepare for a layoff, may seem a little bit off-brand for me because sounds really kind of gloom and doom, but I'm going to just be honest. I mean, this is not a negative presentation. I'm not going to instill fear into your hearts, into your minds with this presentation. I think that at any time we all are up against, you know, are we going to get laid off at some point in our career at some company we're at? And my clients tend to come to me after they've been laid off and they are not in a position to immediately launch into a job search. And so today, what I want to do is I'm not going to spend too much time on the actual layoff, but I am going to spend time on how to identify potential, you know, layoffs, but also how to get your plan B in order, how to get your plan B together. So there's sort of the optimistic side. So let's get started. So this is the agenda today. Today, we're going to help you recognize the signs of a layoff-ripe company. And there are some signs. Some of them are more serious than others. How to get your accomplishments in order in case you need them for an unexpected job search. In fact, the accomplishment exercise I'm going to share with you is really terrific for anything job search related. It helps with your resume. It helps with your pitch. It's sort of multi-purpose. And then how to adopt and expect the best but prepare for the worst mentality throughout your career. Okay, and start a networking campaign. And I probably also should have put in there a branding campaign because we're going to talk a little about branding today. And then how to, if you get affected, to negotiate for outplacement as part of your severance package. And I welcome questions. I'm going to stay to answer them. So if you have one, go ahead and type it in the chat box. Okay, so there's something called a trigger event, and a trigger event is an event that precipitates other events. And they're leading indicators that your company or your division may be in trouble. And some examples of these trigger events are, things that can be found also externally, like in the media, and things that can be found internally, for example, like in your own company. So I'm just going to go through a whole bunch of these and then share with you what is sort of a clear sign that you're going to need a plan B. So a merger or an acquisition doesn't always precipitate a layoff, but it could. Certainly if there's a lot of redundancies in jobs, and if you start to witness, someone else comes in with the same title as you, multiple people come in sort of doing the same function that you do. I've seen this happen before. That could precipitate a layoff. Trouble in paradise type CEO situations, we're riveted to the news when we see these sort of things happening, but people who embezzle money, people who get into a precarious situation, those are definitely warning signs that the CEO might be going, and therefore a new CEO might bring in his or her own people. The company didn't make their numbers, or a product line isn't doing well. Also, if you're doing a product and all of a sudden it gets pulled, or it's considered non-essential, or you're getting put onto things that are not mission critical, that's definitely a warning sign as well. A change in regulations or policy at a potential government level could impact something that you're doing. And so being aware of some government regulations that could be coming down the pike and how they affect the work that you're doing is also important. Projects being postponed or canceled, I touched on this before, but things that were previously really important and mission critical are now delayed and the meetings aren't happening. That's a warning sign too. When budgets are cut, so like non-essential budgets, so executives are flying in business class or coach, or the gourmet coffee in the break room is a lesser brand and the Friday bagels are gone. That's not really a big deal. That's sort of a subtle sign, but it gets worse and more serious if budgets are cut way back, right? So the coffee in the break room is generic, bring your own mug, travel is permitted only for people who are actively bringing in money, so only for revenue generating folks. Then it can be more serious if budgets are seriously cut, right? So no holiday party this year. Travel and hiring freeze lasts for a long time. All travel is curtailed. Offices are downsized or they're moved to a smaller, less expensive location. In fact, that piece right there, experts say, is a major warning sign. Senior managers or leaders resign, not just one, but many. If you start to see a trend where a bunch of people are leaving, or they're starting to be really unhappy and leaving in groups, that is definitely a sign. Divisions, teams, I mentioned this, or offices are moved. Again, that's one of the biggest signs you can see. So also some things to focus on that are not on this, but these are more internal layoff signs, and these are focused sort of inward towards you. Okay, so if you start to notice that your performance evaluations have slipped and your supervisor is more focused on what you're doing wrong rather than what you're doing right, then that could be an issue. You want to pay attention to the quotes, to the language on your performance reviews, and pay attention to what you were doing a few years ago and how your productivity was and how people were viewing you and now how they're viewing you and if it's changed. If you're being singled out in public or in private by management, that's a concern. And also if the workplace is changing to you, decreased recognition, criticism, lack of recognition, sort of the feeling that, you're being watched. All of those things are sort of hard to quantify, and it's more of a feeling, but even those subtle signs can indicate that there could be something more serious going on. Okay, so what to do before you get laid off? So these are signs, you notice them, and what do you do? Certainly I would never advocate that you just jump ship, you just start a job search, because there are definitely things that you can do to refocus your attention on the organization. One of the first few things are open the lines of communication between you and your manager. Make sure that he or she knows that you're committed, that you are very focused on doing productive work, doing work that matters to the organization. Tell him or her that you've noticed that there are some trends going on. and that you want to be invaluable and productive, and that you notice that potentially there could be some redundancies, you want to pay attention and get involved in another new product or project. So you don't want to wait for them to come to you. You also want to take on roles that are out of the box or not within your job description. This is not the time to say that's not my job. So only after your work is done, of course, and done well, but the focus should be on, I still am not busy. I'm taking on stuff that's not mission critical. I see all these signs. I want to get involved. I want to be productive and be real proactive about that. Always be learning. This is, certainly a cliche, always be learning, but you want to start to network within the organization. Sometimes we get so focused on our own job and what we're doing in that moment that we forget that there's this whole organization, and it's just like networking outside for a job, but you're networking inside. So should you get laid off, it is very possible that someone else in the organization may fight for you on their team. And so having someone who can speak highly of you, who can consider you for alternate roles within the organization is really, really important. And that brings me to the next point. If you do not have a mentor or a sponsor, now is the time to do it, even before you recognize any sort of signs of a layoff, okay? Get a mentor or a sponsor. There's a great book that came out called Skip a Mentor, Find a Sponsor, or Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor. And there is a difference. A mentor is focused on sort of a one-way street, offering the gift of wisdom and time and advice, and mentors are absolutely fabulous. They can help us ramp up our game. They can help us get good at our game. They can help be sort of a confidential shoulder to cry on should things not be going so well. But at the end of the day, mentors are going to help you get your game face on, and sponsors are going to help you win the race. So sponsors are about reciprocity. They're about advocacy. They're about commitment. Sponsors are going to go into those meetings behind closed doors, and they are going to shout your praises from the rooftop. They're going to connect you to opportunities, to contacts, to projects. They're going to advocate on your behalf. These sponsors will advance your career. So it's really important to have both. And the way that you find these sponsors is certainly not at the, sort of the 11th hour when you're about to get laid off. Everybody on this call, I encourage you to start seeking out sponsors both in your organization and outside of it. What if you know that it's coming? All right, you may still fear for your job, and if the signs are obvious, you want to get to work on your next steps and protect your future. So this is really for these folks that are pretty sure that something's coming and they're feeling pretty confident that they're going to be affected. Okay, so this is about looking outside and making your plan B and creating a job search plan. The first thing that I encourage all of my clients to do is to go through an accomplishment-based exercise. And if you've never done this before, it is so empowering and absolutely critical to every job seeker's sort of campaign, if you will. So whenever a job seeker or client comes to me, this is always the first activity that I do. And I would say 90% of them they'll say to me, this was so cathartic, this was really helpful. So at the end of this call, whether you're experiencing a layoff or not, if you're thinking quietly and confidentially about a job search, this is the assessment that you want to begin on. The first thing you want to do is you want to make a list of 25 things, okay? We're basically going to examine the most satisfying experiences of our life and of our career. But all of these 25 things that you put on this list, they have to meet 3 criteria. 1, you had to love doing what you did, okay? It was not something that someone handed you and you fought tooth and nail. You just really enjoyed it, and you were grateful that you got it. The next thing is you were really good at it. This was not a fluke. This was something that you could repeat again and again. You know that you're good at it. It's a gift of yours. And then the third criteria is you were really proud of it. And I want to urge you to not just think about big picture stuff. This doesn't have to be I garnered or I boosted revenue $50 million, or I brought in the biggest sponsorship or scholarship ever. It can be a conversation that you had with a client that saved the day, solved the problem, and serve the client. So it could be something that you just made a difference in someone's life, and you are able to do that again and again and again. So I want you to think about these top 25 experiences in your life where you were really proud, you did something that you felt you accomplished something great, you were good at it, and you loved it. And one thing about this exercise I want to point out to you guys is that loving what you do is going to keep you from doing things you dislike again. So if you only put 25 things on a list that you know you love, and then you go through and you look through and find threaded stories about things you love to do and sort of threaded experiences, you will no longer be focused on what you didn't like to do or what someone was forcing you to do. So it's really important that you get that in there. So then we're going to narrow down the 25 to the top 7. And this exercise is called the 7 stories exercise. And then once you get sort of an accomplishment, I trained 15 people, or I implemented some program in the organization. You have a list of 25, you narrow it down to 7. Then what we're going to do is transform these into challenge action result statements. So if you're thinking on the call right now, how does this have to do with a layoff? This helps you uncover what it is that you are really good at. Okay, and also it helps you to communicate it with the world. And if you're going to be laid off, you really do have to focus on a job search. So the CAR technique, this is the way that you would take an accomplishment and put it down on paper and break it down into its sort of finite pieces. So for example, the challenge is what it was that you were faced with. Okay, so this one is automate the media relations process. The action is what we generally see on resumes. Very common. I will look at a sort of a before resume that someone wants me to critique, and it's full of actions. Champion this, led this. But what's missing is the why, tell me why and make it matter. Sort of the so what, right? The why does it matter to the organization that you champion and led this effort? Then if you look down to the results and it says realize 30 million in cost savings, better collaboration, and efficiency improvement, then you get the picture, right? Then you're sort of thinking, okay, I understand why this was important to the organization. And then you can pull it all together. So this is a bullet where you're pulling everything together. And by the way, these 7 stories or up to 25 stories can be used as bullets on your resume, sort of accomplishment bullets. So this one accomplishment becomes champion and led cross-company effort to automate media relations process, source media technology and negotiated buy-in and collaboration across company, realizing 30 million in cost savings while generating collaboration and efficiency improvements. So that could be, it could be something that goes on your career summary at the top of the resume. It can go in an accomplishment bullet in the middle of your resume, or it can go in your pitch, okay, which is what we're going to discuss very soon. Hopefully everyone's following me. I can't tell. I don't know if anyone's talking to me on the chat box here, but hopefully haven't lost anyone yet. Okay. So as soon as you realize that you are going to be laid off or you feel like your future is in a bit of jeopardy, I will just tell you, one thing that I do with my clients is we immediately get them to start being clear about who they are and the value they offer. And that often comes in the form of a pitch. This is called a million different things. It can be your elevator pitch, your commercial, your 30-second commercial. I call it something called your speed networking pitch. Okay, and this is what, if you were to go to a chamber event, this is what people say, stand up and tell us about your business, or stand up and tell us about yourself. So it's your 30-second commercial, but it's a little bit different, and I'm going to tell you what's different about it. So when I go to networking events, I'll just be honest, when I go to networking events and I do my speed networking pitch, what I notice people doing is they're just blah, blah, blah talking about themselves. And honestly, I just want to go and refresh my drink. That's my first intention, is how quickly can I get from here where this person is talking to the other side of the room where the drinks are. I want to exit that conversation as quickly as possible. And I don't want you to be in that position, right? Because if you lose your job, you need people who listen, you need ears, and you need to be able to engage them. And so creating a pitch that's all about you, that's focused on you, isn't really going to do that, because there's no engagement, there's no sort of draw to continue the conversation. So this speed networking pitch is a formula I crafted, and it works again and again, and I think it's terrific, and it's very easy to pull together. So once you've created your 25 stories and you've narrowed them down to 7, and you've turned them into challenge, action, and results, and you pull them all together into like a paragraph, that becomes a story. Okay, that becomes one of your stories. And we're going to use that in this pitch. So a very easy formula for mastering the speed networking pitch, and again, these are at barbecues, this is at, holiday parties, which is coming up soon, so, this is a perfect time to be thinking about speed networking pitches. It's right before holiday time. This is also the answer to the question, what do you do? And in DC, we are workaholics. I don't know how many of you are still in Michigan. I don't think people were as workaholic as they are here, but everyone seems to ask that question, what do you do? It's maybe I sometimes like to count. Let's see how many questions they can ask me before they ask me what I do. But often it's one of the first, second or third questions that I get asked. This is how you would answer it. So as a job title, and that piece is optional. You don't have to always put your job title, but you can start it with as a job title. I work with and share your target audience. So who is it that you help? Who is it that you help? Is it product managers in a specific industry? Is it, and I'm going to show you some samples, but you have to think about who is it that you want to help in an ideal world, and then to share problem that you solve. Okay, so it's a very simple equation of, as a job title, I work with target audience to share this problem that I solve. And then here's the proof. This is where we're going to insert the story that we created from our 7 stories exercise. And it's going to be a story that most resonates with whatever audience that you're speaking to. But we're going to change it just a little bit, because the accomplishment stories are about us. It's about me. And we're going to turn it around so that it's actually about the client and how the client benefited. So if you think about this, if you're going on a job search and you're speaking to someone who could be a potential hiring manager, you don't want to, again, make it all about you. You want to focus it on the hiring manager and say, this is important because, hiring manager, look at what I'm able to do for my clients. Okay, so here are a couple examples. I'm just going to use my own because I say it all the time. As a job search coach, I work with job seekers who are struggling in their search, sending out resumes and not getting interviews. And I teach them a proven job search methodology that helps them stop spinning their wheels and shave months off their job search. And then here's where the story comes in. Just last week, I helped a job seeker return to the workforce after a near-fatal car accident and a 12-year career hiatus. She is so empowered and excited to start her new life. So I could have stopped right after shave months off their job search. But what would happen is I would have failed to engage the listener. And so by incorporating a story into the speed networking pitch, I'm enabling my audience to really care about me and what I do and how I help others. And this is another one that a friend of mine just did. She's an image consultant. She works with people who are basically not promotable. They are having trouble due to their appearance, how they're pulling themselves together. And so hers is, as an image consultant, I work with mid to senior level professionals who understand that their ability to convey this thing called executive presence is critical to moving up the corporate ladder. I show them how to project a total package, looking, sounding, acting the part of a leader. This past June, after receiving 360 feedback about her visual presence, I helped a senior marketing manager up for promotion at a major corporation to update her entire look and wardrobe. She is feeling and looking confident, she embraces compliments, and has finally landed the job of marketing director. So again, we're focusing this story on the client and on the client's success. Hope everyone good? Hopefully if you have questions, you'll be putting them down. Thank you, Stone. You're great. Thanks for communicating with me. Okay, so now we're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about branding and the importance of getting online and making sure that you have the thought leadership that you need before you need a job. Okay, so branding is essential, especially if you are going to be starting a job search, because if you're not online, and a lot of people I'm sure on this call have been reticent to do maybe more than just LinkedIn. I think the word's out that we all have to be on LinkedIn, but some of us are maybe dabbling with Twitter, some may be dabbling with Facebook, maybe even Instagram, but I don't think that there are many people who are confidently sort of moving forward and creating proactive brands. And that's what I want to encourage you all to do, especially if you're facing a potential layoff. So there are 4 types of brands. And all of this is found when you Google yourself. So if you haven't Googled yourself, I encourage everyone on this call to do so. And there are 4 brands that each and every person could have online. One of them is no brand at all. If you have no brand, that means you are completely invisible online. And 94% of employers are looking for people's online presence before they bring them in for an interview. So that's going to be a bad situation to be in. You're going to unwillingly sabotage your job search if you have no brand. But the good news is, if you're on LinkedIn alone, you will at least show up, your LinkedIn profile will at least show up on the first page of Google results, so unless you have a very generic name like John Jones. And so that's the good news, is that having a LinkedIn profile will help you to show up on the first page of Google, which is what's important. The second kind of brand you could have is a haphazard brand, and that is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So it could be pictures of your kids on Facebook, it could be your LinkedIn profile, it could be race results, maybe you're a runner, but it's really nothing that the employer can sort of sink their teeth into and go, this is what this person is known for. Then there's a bad brand, and every time I do one of these calls, inevitably I get a phone call or an email after, someone saying, I'm that person that you were talking about online, I'm the bad brand. And I won't mention some of the situations that people have had because we are a very clean institution. Nobody drinks or does anything bad there, of course, but certainly you could have the same name as, a known criminal, an adult video professional. And those are situations where you certainly want to be in front of your brand and you want to be managing your brand. So that's the third type of brand you could have. The last brand is the best brand, and that is an on-point brand. That is a proactive, aspirational brand. That's the kind of brand that we all aspire to have, okay? And one way that you can find your results, and I'm going to recommend this, and maybe David, you can put that up there, is there's an ID calculator from a company called Reach Branding, and it's online idcalculator.com. And it helps you to make sense of your Google results. So you Google yourself, and then you put it in this calculator, and then it will help you determine if you're highly visible, if your results are positive, if they're negative. So it's kind of a real good assessment for folks that are just starting out to determine what kind of brand that you have. And one thing to think about is everyone on this call has an online brand, whether you know it or not. Even if you don't have anything online, that isn't, that's no brand at all. And so your digital footprint gets to the interview before you do. So we want to manage that. We want to get out in front of that brand. We want to be proactively managing that brand. Okay, so there are some ways that we can be proactive about managing our brand and polishing our personal SEO. So William Arruda, who's the famous personal branding guru, and he did Reach Branding certifications. He hires a lot of the personal branding consultants. His quote is really quite effective. He says, it's not about being famous, but it is about being selectively famous. So essentially, you want to get out in front of your results and you want to claim your expertise. Okay, you have to claim your expertise. And first we're going to talk about how you get online to polish your personal brand, and then we're going to talk about how you're going to claim your expertise. So now you're not just online, now you're going to go out there and you're going to be a thought leader. Okay, but the first thing you need to do is you need to polish your personal SEO. Everyone know what SEO is? Search engine optimization. And it's what you do when you create a website. Well, we as people, we have a personal SEO. We have a search engine optimization. And so we want to make sure that we're polishing our own SEO when we go online. So some of the things that you could do to make that happen are buyyourname.com. Okay, what this does is it allows this website, so mine is lauralabovich.com. I have lauralabovich.com and it directs right back to my website. There's nothing on it. It's really just a website. It's $10 a year. It draws attention to me on the front page of Google when someone searches for me, and it drives attention right back to either my LinkedIn profile or my website. Completing your LinkedIn profile to 100%. That's really critical as well, because LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter are high authority websites according to Google, and they rank their results much higher. And so if a recruiter were to search for you online, you would show up much higher in the results because you have a LinkedIn profile that is completed to 100%. Creating a blog or commenting on other high authority blogs from Alltop or Technorati. Alltop is actually ALLTOP. Or reviewing books in your target field on Amazon. This is something so easy that we can all do. We all have this bookshelf of professional books that we've read. We've put them away. We never think about them. Pull them out, especially if they're in your field, if they're on brand, if they're on point, if they speak to what it is you still do or what it is you still want to be known for doing. Then pull those books back out and log on to Amazon and create yourself an Amazon reviewer account and start reviewing those books in your field. Because Amazon, again, high authority website according to Google. So that will push those results up to the top, and they will push the results, your other either haphazard or bad results will push those down. So you'll land more on the front page of Google. Setting up a Google profile, that's another one, of course, because Google profile is owned by Google. Building a video arsenal, submitting content to article engines, creating a Business Week Exchange profile. These are all really critical things that you're going to need to do to polish your SEO. In addition, once you're online and once you have created a personal sort of SEO that you're comfortable with, and you're no longer an unknown online, and the results that are coming up that are populated online, they're focused on your message that you want employers to see about you. Your LinkedIn profile is really clear, has a clear message about who you are and what your next steps are. Then it's time to start claiming your expertise, and it's time to become a go-to expert. So conducting informational interviews, impressing hiring managers by knowing industry secrets can only happen if you're really, really in the know, okay? So we have to subscribe to newsletters. We have to subscribe to popular industry blogs, read trade journals, attend webinars. I have so many of these. I could go on, but I'm just going to add a couple. Start a LinkedIn group and modify it. Conduct a webinar or a teleseminar. You could, if you have an area of expertise, you could be on radio. There's a website called radioguestlist.com, and they look for people just like you to go on the radio and talk about your topic that you're an expert in. You could be in print, which Help a Reporter Out, helpareporterout.com. They are a site that pairs journalists with sources. So if you know you have an expertise in a certain area, you can go on to helpareporterout.com and you can submit your answers, and you could be in print. Create a branded email signature. These are really great. Wise Stamp has a great branded signature email. Instead of just putting your first name and your last name and your phone number, create something that's more compelling so that when people look at it, they know exactly who you are. Writing an ebook, writing a regular book, creating a club or a networking event, teaching college or adult classes, creating a press release. It goes on and on. But the bottom line here, guys, is that it's really important that once you get online, that you don't just sort of become static, okay? And that especially if you're facing a layoff or if you know that it's going to happen, you want to become a go-to expert. You want to become a thought leader in your field. It's so much easier to do it when you're employed than it is to do it when you're already unemployed, and then you're trying to go and behind the 8 ball and create all this from scratch. So I recommend a couple books for branding in general. One of them is called Career Distinction, and the other one is Personal Branding for Dummies. And this is, I think both of these are really exceptional books. Some more information about sort of becoming the go-to expert. That's my book, 100 Conversations for Career Success. But I want to point out one thing before we move on. In the book, Personal Branding for Dummies, there is a sample communications plan that has you assign deliverables pertaining to your brand for each month of the year, which I think is fabulous. It's sort of like a branding calendar, if you will. They have something where each month you're doing something special for your brand. So for example, in January, they would have you doing a headshot, researching groups that you want to join, writing an article about a hot topic in your industry, and then they have you looking inside your company. And so that might be offering to maybe do a webinar series about a topic on which you're an expert. So there are some great books out there to help you sort of refine and nurture and grow your brand. especially while you're employed, and you do want to be careful not to do this all at once, but having this happen slowly rather than having to rush at it after you're laid off is so much easier. And again, preparing your resume, the accomplishments that we've talked about in the beginning are going to help you a ton when we add those signature bullets, these wonderfully crafted bullets, into our resume. In addition, you want to start collecting all of the things that you don't think are important right now. You want to make sure that you collect these on an ongoing basis. Training, certifications, any accomplishments that you've had, awards and accolades, performance reviews. Make sure you collect all of those. All of your performance reviews and the quotes that you have on performance reviews, those will be useful if you ever have to go and write your resume. You can put quotes on resumes now, which is really a kind of new feature in trending in resumes. So collect all of that stuff. I actually have something that has come in handy. I have something called a happy file. And my happy file is any email I've ever received from a client or a colleague that essentially says something nice about me. It could be just a thank you, anything. And so you want to make sure you collect those emails into your happy file or whatever you want to call it, and collect all these other things as well so that you're prepared if you need to write your resume. And this is an example of CAR, the challenge action result example, in a resume. So I'm just going to show you how this is used when you take those stories and you incorporate them onto your resume. So look at the second bullet. Increased enrollment in the school by 15% and boosted the academic excellence of the school's program offerings. Created the Pathway to University program that maintained full employment from its inception to the present time with the highest student progress rate among all programs. What a cool bullet. I didn't write that, but that's a great bullet. So this is great because let's think about this. The result is that enrollment increased. That's the result. The action is that the Pathway to University program was created. And the challenge was maintaining full enrollment from the inception to the present time. Another result, of course, was the highest student progress rate among all programs. And so what we could have done with this bullet to not have it be fully sort of fleshed out was you could say, created the Pathway to University program. But that would be lonely. We wouldn't know what that meant and what kind of impact that had on the organization. This is why we flush out all of these bullets to include a challenge and an action and a result. So, okay, now that we're focused on what we're going to do when we leave, not when we leave, if we have to leave the organization, if we have to prepare to leave the organization, I want to focus on what can happen if you do get let go. And I just want to encourage everyone that you can negotiate outplacement as a part of your package. This is sometimes taboo, and it's not for the faint of heart, I will be honest with you, but it does happen, and especially if you have a really good relationship with your manager, or if you're a small company and there's no precedent for this, it's definitely something that you can go up to your boss, your management team, and say, listen, can you incorporate money into the severance that can be used for outplacement? So you want to try to negotiate the outplacement before you sign any contracts. And outplacement, guys, is when your organization, before they let you go, they hire a company like mine who can help you with your resume and your job search strategy and your coaching and your interviewing. And obviously it's better than you having to pay on your own. So it's additional funding you'll receive as a part of your termination agreement. And really the key here is ask for it. Okay, you just have to ask for it before you sign your contract. And a couple grand, $3 or $4 grand will go a long way. And to the organization, it's not much, especially if you're being let go with only a few people. With a larger organization, it's potentially harder because they can negotiate, sort of large contracts, and they don't want to give it to you and not give it to someone else. But some of these smaller organizations that are letting go just a handful, absolutely, 1000% make sure you ask for it. I guarantee you're not going to get it if you don't ask for it, but you might get it if you do. So, real quick, I want to take questions. I do want to share something David said before, and I'm happy to answer questions. I did just launch a 40-hour online job search course, and I'm selling it. Its value is $1,500, but for MSU folks, for Spartans, it's $197. It's basically an online graduate course in job search. It's a fantastic course. It's all my coaching and all my training sort of bundled into this online course. If you're interested, I'm not going to talk about it anymore, but if you're interested, send me an email below to with the subject hired on the subject line. So I just want to open it up for questions at this time, and yeah, how about we do that? David?
Yeah, we have a shy bunch of people, it seems like, today.
Oh my goodness. How about any job search question at all? It doesn't matter.
Stone,
he's asking.
We don't have your mics with the ability for you to speak, so you would have to type in the questions. I would also invite any comments, any experiences that you've had with this subject that you might be able to share, and maybe Laura might be able to give some insight around some of that stuff too. So there we go. We have a question from DB, Laura. How can people who work in... Go ahead. I'll let you do it.
In competitive, confidential industries, do branding networking without revealing confidential information? Do you suggest having more than... Okay, that's another question. So essentially, the question is, I imagine, how do you conduct a confidential job search? And, you know, branding is not specific to job search. Becoming a thought leader in your industry doesn't specifically mean that you are conducting a job search. You know, I would probably work on it inside your company. So if you're trying to conduct to become a thought leader and do the work that we're talking about in this session, I would see what you can do inside the organization. How can you become a thought leader in your own organization? And then it won't be considered sort of competitive. I'm not sure if I know enough about competitive confidential industries. She might be talking about the CIA. She might be talking that sort of thing. If that's true, if it's like CIA type work, then it is hard because you can't focus on sort of your accomplishments in the CIA. You can't be real specific, but you can go out there and speak as an expert. You can still do things like writing an ebook that isn't specifically about, you know, what it is you're working in. You can write articles. You may want to get permission, but you can certainly do that. If she's talking about being in a job search and she's leaving, or he is leaving and they're in the CIA, how do you go about promoting your accomplishments in that situation? You can do more generic accomplishments, focusing on ways in which you've helped the client and helped the organization versus talking about the actual project at hand. Okay. Do you suggest having more than one LinkedIn account in case your manager wants to be a connection? No. Carla, no, you can only have one LinkedIn account. Because you're going to want that sort of stream of connectivity with all the people you're working with you want them all to connect with you in one place. You don't want to have some in one and some in another. But here's what I would do. If your manager wants to be a connection, then let him or her be a connection. There's nothing wrong with connecting to your manager. And if you start looking, it doesn't mean that you are announcing that you're looking for a job. If you start connecting with people on LinkedIn and start going into groups, a lot of people are doing that. Employed people are doing that. But I would say anytime you update your profile, okay, first and foremost, you don't want to put that you're seeking job opportunities at the bottom. So that's really careful. So check that. Make sure you don't have that. And then anytime you update your profile, you don't want your manager to know that you're making those changes, that it's going to be really obvious. So you want to go to the settings and uncheck the box that indicates that you want all of that to show up in the news feed. Okay, so when you're making those changes, it will not notify the rest of the world and your manager. And what will happen is you'll make the changes. Maybe your manager will come back and look at your profile 3 months later and won't notice what's been changed. Okay, so that's what I would do. How transferable is this to the public sector? Much of this seems private. This piece is, branding, you have to remember, even in the public sector, there are openings that come out in like usajobs.gov that they already know who they're going to choose. Okay, and the reason I know this is because I'll get a lot of these job descriptions. My clients will come to me and say, I want to get a resume for this position. And I'll say, the job is only going to be open for 5 days. and they say, well, yeah, it's a rush position. I said, no, that means they have a candidate in mind. Okay, if they're open for months, then they're searching. If they have a candidate in mind, that's code for we know who we want. And the we know who we want is someone they've already known about. Either they got in through the back door, they know someone inside the organization, they have an expertise that has elevated to the level of the government knowing about it. And so that's where the branding comes into play, right? You can still be the known candidate. Do you need to apply for the job online? Yes. Are you going to need to submit your resume? Yes. You can't circumvent that, but you can still be the known candidate by elevating your brand in the marketplace. Kevin, for those in the technology industry, how do we best prepare for technical interviews? I.e., what Google, Facebook put their interviewers through. I would try to find someone who works at those organizations and pick their brain. If you are not necessarily going on an interview yet, this is the perfect time to do it. Start networking with people. See if you can even cold call someone and say, listen, I don't know you. My dream is to work for your organization. Would you share with me 10 minutes of your time? I'd love to talk to you about how the interview was. It's so hard to find this information online. I'd be truly grateful. So that's one thing. And to get their numbers is kind of easy, actually. I mean, you can find them in a group on LinkedIn. You can call the headquarters of the location once you've found their name on LinkedIn. You can call the headquarters directly. But you have to be bold and brave to do a cold calling campaign, but that's one way. There are a lot of books now out for how do you, survive a Google interview. If you go online, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff about it. If you just search like case interviews and landing a job at Google, you can piece together what are some of the questions you'll be asked and how the process and the day goes. I don't know the answer to that last question, Marcia, but I would love to know. Is that it? Okay. Carla, is there one list of books mentioned today and also the image consultant? The image consultant I use is in DC, and her name is Annette Harris. I'm happy to recommend her. Her company is Show Up, LLC. She's phenomenal. But there are image consultants everywhere who can help you to pull together your personal brand. And I will tell you, when I was at Disney, when I worked at Disney, they have a Disney look, and I was amazed that I performed my job super well. I was really confident. I was successful, but I got dinged on my performance review because my nail polish was too red. True story, too red. So you never want to underestimate the importance of just looking polished and looking like you have a very clean look. Okay, let's see. How can you reciprocate in order to incentivize people to help you? That's a great question. I have a chapter about that actually in my book, in 100 Conversations for Career Success. There's a whole chapter on how to be generous in your job search. But one thing that I share with people is that you're not going to want to go into these conversations begging for help. You want to go in looking for an acronym I use is AIR, A-I-R, advice, insight, and recommendations. And then you want to get to know them, right? So you definitely don't want to ask for a job, right? Because that's going to set up the situation, set up the relationship in sort of a negative way, right? It's you're helping me and I'm taking something from you. But if you're setting it up in terms of, I just want some advice, I want your insights as an expert in this field, it's really important to me, you seem to have been very successful at what you do. People do like to talk about themselves, and so if you treat them with respect, generally, they will want to help you. But one thing I always say is try to get to know them on a personal level. If you go into their meeting, into an office, and you are talking to them about what it's like to work in their organization, and you see, a picture of a kid on a horse, I would get to know what that picture's about. Is it their son who is an equestrian? Where do they ride? You want to ask a few questions and then follow up potentially with even an email or an article about horses or something that you think will change the dynamic of the relationship from I'm taking from you to this is a shared relationship. This is a reciprocal relationship. Hope that helps. How can you do that without being creepy? It also takes, sometimes it doesn't happen the first time around. And to get a sponsor and a mentor, people do also decide to serve as a mentor and a sponsor because it makes them feel good. You know, it's not always about getting something from that person directly. It's about serving others. And so if you appeal to their need to help and their need to contribute to the world, and you're not ready to do this sort of equestrian thing and talk about their kids, then they may just want to be a sponsor and be a mentor because they like who you are and they like what you do, or they want to do something to contribute and give back. And not everyone is going to say yes, by the way. So if you have a relationship with someone already in the organization who you think very highly of, who you've seen do good things, but they don't know you very well, get to know them and then just ask them. Just ask them. They may say no, but they may say yes. And the way you appeal to them is, you have had a really great career, and I admire what you've done at this organization. And while I don't want to do exactly what you've done, I want to just be able to share in what you know. And I'd be honored if you would be my mentor. And if they say no, then fine, move on to the next person. But this is all about asking, you know, just being bold and asking. You definitely will not get it if you don't ask. Someone's still typing.
Laura, I have a question while Carla's typing.
Sure.
So on the issue of branding, right? So if you know you're about to get laid off, or if you've just been laid off, or maybe you're working, you're just kind of secretly, quietly looking, what advice would you have if somebody is wanting to kind of switch gears? So, and I think this could apply to like maybe a college student that's just about to graduate. So, right, they don't really have, they're kind of still developing a brand and they need to like transition to the workplace. But also I'm thinking particularly about like someone that's maybe 45 and they've been doing one thing their whole life and now they want to rebrand themselves into something else. What ideas do you have for those kind of people?
So that's a great question, David. I have a lot of clients like that who are, they may have gone into something and moved up the ladder, and now they're 45 and they're realizing that they have, 30 more years of work and they want to be happy and they're not. One of the things I would do is stay away from branding at that juncture. Okay, you don't want to leap into how I can offer value into the world until you know who you are and what you want to do next. And so the key thing to do when you're contemplating a career change is engage a coach, read some books, talk to people about what it is you think you want to do, okay? Once you determine what you want to do next, then there's a whole bunch of steps that you can take. And in this call, maybe I'll be back and I'll do another call on that. But there are a whole bunch of steps you can take, but the key is, and I'm going to just sum it up in 3 words, is become an insider. And let's say you are a business development executive and you decide that you don't want to do that anymore and you want to go into procurement, okay, but you don't know much about procurement. Well, now you need to get to know about procurement, right? So you've done some assessments, you know that procurement sounds interesting to you, it's maybe not as senior, you may be taking a pay cut, but that's okay. Now you want to talk to as many procurement people as you possibly can. You want to read the trade journals about procurement. You want to maybe shadow someone in procurement. So all of this can be done while you're working. Okay, maybe you join an association that has to do with procurement. So, but essentially, once you decide that you want to make that shift, then you want to become an insider. You want to immerse yourself in the culture of procurement. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So let's, can we aim that, the second part of that question kind of is aiming it back. So let's say I'm 22 years old. I've only been like, I've worked at like, I don't know, one of the res halls here or something. Say I worked at Brody cleaning dishes, okay? And
Brody!
Yeah, and I'm a packaging major, right? And let's say I graduate and go, you know what? I really don't like packaging. What do I do now? Do you have some different advice for somebody that would be kind of at that same stage, or would you follow the same kind of thing that you just laid out for us?
You absolutely have to do the exact same thing, because you can't start a campaign. And this is one of the challenges when my clients come to me and they say, I've been searching for 6 months. I've been looking for a job. I'm not getting anything. And then I say, well, okay, well, what do you want to do? Okay, well, I want to be a marketing manager. And then I look at their resume and it has like IT, software sales, right? And I ask them, well, first, your resume doesn't showcase you as a marketing manager. And then I'll ask them a little bit further, what kind of marketing do you want to do? I don't know. I'm not really sure. You know, there's digital marketing and there's social media marketing. I guess it really doesn't matter to me. And I guess I'd sort of still do sales. So you can't start a job search that way. Okay, you really, I want to encourage everyone on this call to take a step back before you jump into the job search, because if you can't clearly articulate what it is you want to do, and by that I mean job title, you know, potential industry, ideally an industry, and then geographic region. So something like, I want to be a marketing manager, a digital marketing manager in the manufacturing space, and I want to do it in you know, Detroit. Okay, you know, well, great, then Shinola watches would be a great target company for you, right? And then you can really get into, you know, oh, let's get you an introduction to someone there, right? But unless you can get that kind of clarity, you're not ready to start a job search. And the more you struggle and try to just send out your resume and get people to help you, the more confused you're going to get, and the more confused the recruiters are going to get, because they won't know how to help you.
I think so. In one key thing you're saying here is know yourself well, and I also hear you saying that authenticity and in some sense maybe transparency are very good things. Can you talk about kind of those concepts a little bit?
Well, I definitely believe that being transparent is important. I think knowing yourself, though, is probably the most important thing there, because, you know, when you are in a job search, there are two people that you need to engage. One, the hiring manager, and two, your network. Okay? If you can't clearly articulate to your network, your friends, your colleagues, your former colleagues, what it is that you want, clearly, okay, then they're not in a position to help you. And then you're just going to prolong your job search. Okay? So David, knowing yourself is critical. And I know that sounds so generic, but there are people who can help you figure all that out before you spend months and months and months trying to just jump into a job search when you're not 100% sure what you want to do. So being transparent with yourself, you know, and stopping, you know, the urge to just go and apply for any job that's out there just because you want to leave the one you're in. That's hard for us to do, but it is going to serve you better if you really get clarity on who it is you are and what you want to do next, because recruiters, they don't have time to figure it out. Sometimes they have 60 jobs to fill, and they're not going to spend time looking at your resume and going, well, you know, maybe I think this person would be good for this job.
Thank you for stating so eloquently what I've said so many times in 15 years of doing this work. I appreciate that. We may just lift that quote from you. So we're going to take... We'll take one more question. DB has a question there, so we'll have that. We'll let you answer that one out loud. And then what we're going to do at 1:30, I'm going to turn off the voices, and we will leave the chat room open. So if you guys who are here want to continue to talk with Laura and with each other, we will leave the chat room open. Also, I invite you, once the chat room closes, to continue on this conversation on Twitter. We are at Helping Spartans there, and we're using the hashtag Layoffs. So go ahead and answer DB's question, and then I'll close it out, and we will keep the chat room open for a little while.
Sure. And I just want to say I'm so thrilled to be here, and it's been such a great hour. What a worthwhile hour for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. And let me just answer, DB. There are a lot of assessments out there that can help you figure out what you want to do. Okay, but a lot of times I think it's twofold. Okay, it's two kinds of research to figure out that specific job. One, I call it in the books, and two, I call it face-to-face. So in the books means you're going to read about all the different jobs that are out there that you think pique your interest. It might be on Career Builder, on Monster. You're going to go through job descriptions. You go to ONET. You might go to the Career Center at Michigan State. You want to find out what jobs are out there and narrow it down. Okay, narrow it down to maybe 10 that you think are worthwhile for you, for your personality. There are tons of assessments. There's the strong interest. There's Myers-Briggs. The career centers, especially if you're still local to Michigan, near Michigan State, go to Michigan State. Take advantage of the Career Services Center there. Likely, they will give you a lot of these assessments to help you figure it out. So that's the in the books piece. That's where you're going to research. The second piece is face-to-face. And there's nothing that can replace face-to-face information. And what will happen is if you have 10 jobs, for example, that you're considering, it's going to take a little while to narrow it down. But the goal is try to find someone in each of those jobs. And the alumni network, I'm sure, can help at MSU. Just asking around, I need to find someone who's in procurement, or I need to find someone who's in, social media consulting. Talking to them and saying, tell me about your day. Tell me what you do. Tell me how much you make, if you're willing. Tell me what you had to do to get this job. Is it competitive? What's the market like? All of those things will help you rule that job in or rule that job out. And that's the goal when you're trying to figure out what is a likely career target for you. So I hope that helps. And again, I know we're going to close up shop. I know Dave is going to say something, but I just want to thank you guys so much. I really am so honored to be here. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Laura, for being here with us. This is really informative. I really appreciate a lot of things that you had to say. And to remind you, this has been recorded, so all of the links that are in here, everything that's in the chat, will be a part of the recording. So once we get it back on our blog, SpartansHelpingSpartans.com, you'll be able to go there. You'll be able to listen to this again. You'll be able to see all of the chat. You can forward through and rewind through the pieces that you want to hear again as much as you want. So I want to kind of introduce you to ourselves if you haven't heard about what we're doing in the Alumni Association, and I put it all in here in text, but the MSU Alumni Lens program exists to build a portfolio of professionally and personally enriching content and experiences for Spartans around the globe. So what that means is that we're always looking for ideas regarding content and experiences that are going to help Spartans to grow. We really want to help facilitate this process of being able to get to know one another and help one another in your personal and professional development. And that's one of these things that we do with these webinars. We bring great people like Laura to talk to you for a little while, but that connection doesn't have to end just with the webinar. I would encourage you follow up with Laura, connect with each other, jump into our LinkedIn group. There are 52,000 Spartans that are in that LinkedIn group, and you will easily be able to find somebody that can help make that next connection for you. So continue this conversation on Twitter. We're at Helping Spartans. We're using the hashtag layoffs for this conversation. We do post jobs when we get them through the Twitter account, and that's the hashtag MSU jobs. We also post them in our LinkedIn group, but we want to facilitate these places for you to share amongst yourself. So I would encourage you, if you know of a job lead, share them using those resources with other Spartans. If you are a hiring manager or know of hiring managers, help them to do that same place. We want to be able to gather these resources in places where Spartans are, so that we can keep sharing. Our next webinar is November 13th, and this is going to be negotiations. Negotiate your way to success, and this will be by Molly Fletcher. And you might know her as the agent for this very important guy on campus. His last name is Izzo. Some people kind of know who he is. So that's probably how you know her. So we're really excited to bring Molly in here on November 13th to talk about negotiation. She's got a new book out as well, and so she's going to be featuring some of that content. And I think it piggybacks really well off of Laura's presentation here. So please go back to SpartansHelpingSpartans.com and look through all of our library. There's a ton of webinars on there and great topics that can help you out. With that, I am going to close out the audio portion of the webinar, and I will leave the chat room open for you to continue chatting, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Go Green!